Appian Way on both sides. The Roman Appian Way was well kept and paved with drainage on both sides. The principal residence was on the right, and the principal always trekked from there to school, a distance of about 1 kilometer along the Appian Way. Our principal, Mr. A.A.E. Sage, used to walk majestically to his office from his residence. He was the father of Ites Sage, renowned senior advocate of Nigeria and chairman of President Buhari Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption. Ites was a young man then. The older Sage, our principal, though strict, could not really describe as a disciplinarian. Nevertheless, he had this aura that told you to comport and behave yourself. Whenever he gave you a disapproving look. If he saw you on the street, he looked at you and moved on without saying anything. But you immediately corrected anything inappropriate about you. If you had not tucked your shirt in properly or something like that, you did once. Principal Sage looked at you without even uttering a word. Most people who signed up as American Peace Corps volunteer do so for various reasons, one of which is to influence change in their community. And for 34 years, between 1966 and 1995, Nigeria had the privilege of having these change makers hold different roles, such as teachers in different parts of the nation. Edo College got its fair share of these volunteers as teachers in those days, and they played a significant role in my education. I had British, Indian, American, and other foreign teachers, and they were outstanding. I remember having a white history teacher, and at another time, a French teacher, Mr. J.T. Gransinge. He was a petite and meticulous man who was always smartly dressed. He gave no room for nonsense. Imagine asking class 1 students who had probably never heard or spoken French before to communicate only in French during the class. Gransinge's English language and vernacular was not allowed in his class. Gransinge was somebody you could not forget in a hurry. If he asked you a question, you had to answer in French. He always had a ruler, which he used to punish students who missed an answer, and he used the ruler to hit our knuckles. Surprisingly, after 3 months in his class, most of us could speak basic French. It was incredible. Some of my classmates had already finished modern school, a post-secondary school. Some even had children before coming to college. He used to tease these older students in French. His French accent was impeccable, and he wanted us to emulate that. In fact, during our school reunion in 2019, we formed a French class, and somebody came out to play Gransinge. It was fantastic. Gransinge ended up as a French professor at the University of Ibadan before returning to his country. Miss Pear and sundry teachers. Love, they say, strike at the most unexpected time and in the strangest places. What I had might more appropriately be termed infatuation, and at an unusual time indeed. I developed a crush for Miss Spear, a young Peace Corps lady who taught us English language. I was love-struck enough to even compose a birthday poem for her titled, "Oh, Miss Spear." I read the poem to her on her birthday, and she was so flattered that she gave me a tight hug that left me feeling made for life. My dear Miss Spear is now in her early 80s and lives in England. Teachers are like technology app programmers. They can write a program of life sequence in the heart of their students. They are like sculptors. They can mold perception, worldview, and ultimately the destiny of their pupil. Of a truth, there is no telling the extent to which a touch, a smile, a word of encouragement, or a frown from a teacher can impact and change or shape a child. Some other teachers who impacted me include my fine art teacher, Dr. Colette Omogbai, who now lives in America, and Mrs. Obaseki. I also remember our bespectacled history teacher, Mr. S.B. Omoroge. Again, the memory of Mr. Akpokene, our agricultural teacher, will remain indelible as he inculcated in us the spirit of farming, as well as a veritable means of food production from an early age. One American Peace Corps member who stood out was Mr. K.G. Watson. The physics teacher, Mr. S.K. Momodu of blessed memory, who was not only our physics teacher, but also an ex-student of the school. He was later to become Dr. Momodu. They need the replacement. A lecturer at the University of Benin. They need something to replace it. There is heat. He was a passionate Edo College Old Boy Association alumnus, and he served as the national president before his demise. Other teachers that come to mind include Mr. Dorin, Mr. Enowo, the mathematics guru, Mr. Elo, Mr. Ogo Jafo, and Mr. Edokolo. The chemistry teacher, I can go on and on the teachers in Edo College because every teacher imparted me in their way. But while every other teacher was literate, there was one who was not. My woodwork teacher, Mr. Omorege. He was an old carpenter and one of the most senior teachers in the school. Woodwork was a subject that carried a lot of marks, and we had carpentry workshops. Mr. Omorege was of colonial extraction and often wore white shorts, white socks, and white shoe. We used to call him Apia. He had a bicycle he rode to school. He would say, "Pran the wood straight, pran the wood straight and smooth, pran the wood straight, smooth throughout of winding." He meant to say, plane the wound straight and smooth, plane the wound straight, smooth throughout windy. We had our way with Apia, and we had fun, joked, laughed, and teased him, as long as we were not caught. But when it was time for examinations, the story changed. Even though the subject was practical, the examination was theoretical. If you fail to remember all his instructions, you failed the subject. Where it gets unpalatable is that our examination results were always heavily determined and impacted by woundwork results. Your true performance in other subjects notwithstanding, you could score 80% to 90% in all other subjects, but your woodwork results could bring you crashing down to an overall 60%. The funny thing was, Appiah scored you not according to your academics performance, but according to who you were and how he perceived you. Whether you were a good or bad boy, he had a clerk who used to do the writing and markings for him. He would ask his clerk, "Who is the next student?" The clerk would answer, "The next student is Eyenede Akenzua." And Appiah would respond, "Give him 90, Naoba Pikin." Then he would ask, "Who will be the next student?" The clerk would answer again, "The next student." And Appiah would say, "Obigo, give him 10. Owibo, give him 10. Our dormitories were named after some past obas. We had Eweka House, the oldest, followed by Ozolua House. The naming convention changed to European principles, and so there were Spare House and Nana House, for instance. In each house, we had a shared open space bathroom with multiple showers. The bathroom had no roof, just walls, and then ropes hanging towards an adjoining toilet, on which we hung our towels while bathing. I still need food, that food is pepperish. Don't go buy snacks. All students had their bath simultaneously, but the older one could decide to use the bathroom first, not minding that we were classmates. We had a house laundryman, an old man we called Esige house washerman, who used to wash our clothes and beddings and iron them. In the dormitory itself, the houses were organized and we were well cared for. As soon as you arrived, you were handed over to a sort of mentor or college who was referred to as Wami. He took care of you, put you through the system, monitor you, and punished you if you misbehaved. In return, you cleaned his shoes, carried his cutlery to the dining hall, and things like that. My college father was Felix Ebon, Uncle Felix's friend. As head student, he looked on like a god. And as his college son, I dare not misbehave in school. If I was punished for some domino in the class, when I get to the hostel, he will punish me as well. In short, I had to always ensure I was a good boy and not get into trouble. Edo College operated a system based purely on merit. According to our school report, we are categorized into classes, and the teachers were a mix of expatriates and Nigeria. Education was fantastic in those days. The school was non-denominational, so on Fridays, the Muslims went to their mosques. On Sundays, the Christians went to their churches. And it was a fitting and beautiful arrangement, even though we lived a regimented life. School was exciting. A compulsory siesta followed lunch, and after siesta, it was sports. We played different sports like football, cricket, athletics during the season, and basketball and baseball. I remember our art. Then we also had a co-ed higher school certificate section, HSC. The secondary school section was purely male, but the HSC was mixed. The female had their hostel outside the school premises. I stay at Edo College. I was reported to be quiet, diligent, well-behaved child and student. My parents did not have much, so my provision consisted of gari, aki, pamkane, and azu mangala, a type of smoked fish cut into chunks. Every term, my father gave me £1, 10 shillings, as a pocket money, which took care of everything I needed for the period, excluding books. While some privileged students could afford to behave flippantly, I was cautious not to get into trouble. Whenever there were good movies in those days, they were shown in cinemas in town, and some students would sneak out to watch. I could not dare such things, as my father would tempted Eve, face my temptations in class 4. It came in the form of the 1966 war film, Lost Command. The movie attracted so many publicity that it felt like the greatest thing that has ever happened in the entertainment industry at the time. It was eventually scheduled to show in Benin at the Lido Cinema, and many of my schoolmates planned to sneak out to watch the movie. Since housemaster usually went around the house at night to see his students were in their rightful places, thorns wanting to sneak out would arrange their pillow, bed sheets, and blankets in shape of a human. The idea was, of course, to deceive the housemaster. I feared my dad and the consequences of getting into trouble. But when my colleague said, "Greg, you mean you won't go watch the Lost Command? Let's go. Are you the only person in this school?" My resistance broke. I suppressed the voice that kept saying, "Don't." There was no way I am going to miss Lost Command, I said to myself. Unknown to us, the school authority had gotten wind of our plan, and that night, they activated a more thorough search and inspection of the hostel. They went from bed to bed, comparing names of those absent. The judgment came swiftly for the absent students, and it was at the assembly the very next morning. Our mates, who did not sneak out to see Lost Command, had informed us of what happened in our absence, so we knew we were in real trouble. I just kept muttering to myself, "My father will kill me today." My head was filled with pictures of both my biological and college father descending on me, because I was always winning prizes. Most of the HSC girls liked me. I was like the golden boy, and this had many benefits, including getting free provisions from them frequently. Well, the good boy was about to get whipped publicly in front of all his admirers. Suddenly, the cloud looked blurrier and cloudier than usual, a sight that is not uncommon on Judgment Days. In Edo College, our morning assemblies held outside in open spaces. That morning, the principal talked about ethics, about the reward of being good students, and the consequences of being bad ones. His speech was long, like that of a Supreme Court judge about to deliver a sentence. After his talk, the teachers called out all the students involved in the previous night truce, about 70 of us. When my name was mentioned, I could see some of my seniors glancing at each other as if asking if it was possible. I knew I was in trouble. All of us offenders were lined up, and 7 young and strong teachers with long cane joined us. 10 pupils were assigned to each teachers to receive 24 lashes of cane each on their buttocks. Already. The pain I anticipated would be meted on my body by the lashes was nothing as the pain of disgracing my family. To say that I felt miserable would be putting my feelings nicely. There, I was about to be publicly flogged and humiliated before teachers, whom I was nothing but cherubic. Female students who adored me and everyone else, most of who held me in high regard. When my tongue came to be beaten, the whole place became silent, and you could almost hear a pin drop. It was an unusual sight to see Greg Ogbefun about to be flogged. Please let me tie this thing back. Unfortunately for me, the man for the job was none other than Mr. Akpokone, the agricultural science teacher of blessed memory, a very wicked one in the opinion of the students. Well, back then, the teachers who hardly spared the cane were tagged wicked. I can never forget him. Without sparing any seconds, Mr. Akpokone commenced the duty. When the first stroke landed, I did not shake. The same thing with the second one. A very skilled man at applying the cane, Mr. Akpokome concentrated on the same spot. And even though I did not react outwardly, I was bleeding inside. Having steeled myself against the pain, Mr. Akpokome became infiltrated at my stillness. In anger, he rolled up his sleeve, determined to see me break down in tears, or at least move an inch from the pain being inflicted. Surely, no erring student could make lashes administered by him. The renowned Akpokome looked like catwalk. By the time he gave me the 12th stroke, I did not shake. Our now thoroughly amused and amazed audience exploded. I had survived all Akpokone's 24 lashes. When he finished, I walked to a corner, stood there for a while, and then started crying. Contrary to my initial fears, my heroism won me free food items from friends and admirers. To take 24 stroke of Mr. Akpokene fierce stroke and not flinch, like going to the war front and returning in one piece. I demystified Mr. Akpokene. I was a hero, a legend. Very recently, I ran into Miss Ereta Asemota, one of the senior girls back then. Decades has passed, but she recalled this incident as she passed a comment which I considered ironic. When she said, "Look at you, you are a big boy now." Well, the only time I tried to be a big boy now, I was caught and publicly disgraced. From that day onward, I retraced my step to the street at Edo College, which paid off because I ended up becoming a star student and the senior prefect of my house, SCGA house, before I graduated. Benin and Edo College too. in school with the Oba. The current Oba of Benin, Oba Ewere II, was my classmate at Edo College. While my family were still living in Enugu, he, then Crown Prince, also resided in Enugu with his father. The two of us got admission into Edo College at the same time, and it was there we connected. As luck would have it, his father arranged to have his car pick us up on subsequent journey to Benin. So I always rode with the prince to school. He was called Enede Akenzua then, father and guardian. The Oba visited his grandson periodically. Usually on Sunday in Kingdom, we genuinely understand what it means to be in the presence of an Oba of Benin. The title of Oba was created by the legendary Oromia, son of Oduduwa, Benin Kingdom first Oba. The Oba of Benin was the head of states of the Benin Kingdom. He was seen as divine, and his divinity was what made him so powerful. It was always important to keep the Oba shrouded in misery. He was never easily seen and only left his palace at exceptional times when there was a ceremonial processions. The Oba divinity and sacredness was the focal point of the kingship, and asserting that the Oba performed ordinary human activities like sleeping or eating could be punishable by death. Things have changed a lot. The institution of Obaship in Benin has been kept alive for centuries. Since tradition did not allow Enede Akenzua to have physical contact with his grandfather, whenever he came visiting, the prince and I would run to meet him and stand by his beautiful Cadillac, always donning his pair of dark shade. The Oba would wind down the tinted window to talk to his grandson. Once he finished talking to his grandson, the Oba would always ask, "Where is that your friend?" referring to me. I was not allowed to get close, but that never prevented him from tossing me one toro, a 3-pence coin, which was a lot of money then. He would flip it into the air for me to cash, leaving me grinning from ear to ear. This he did every time he came visiting the prince. Academic performances. In class 1, 2, and part of 3, I was not a very bright student. I took the 18th and 20th position respectively in the sessional examinations. I was 21st position in the early part of the 3rd year. With my parents in Enugu and my guardian hardly coming to visit, I felt all alone like an orphan in Benin. Other students had parents who came around to see them on the visiting days, but nobody came for me. This affected my morale, and I felt I did not owe anyone my loyalty to succeed. God knows where I would have been now if things had continued the same. But in the exciting turn of events, the story changed in the later part of class 3, and I woke up from my dull state. I am not exactly sure what motivated me or how it happened, but at the end of the year, I was 3rd in my class. Ask them how many minutes break do I have. I immediately noticed a change of attitude from everyone to me. The principal, my teachers, and my classmates. I loved the attention, so I said to myself, if that was come with benefit at the top, then I've been missing a lot. As a student, I was not so active in sport. The only sport I engaged in was cricket, and it did not exactly take too much of my time. It was the same with a few of my friends in school. So rather than expend our energy on sports, 2 of my friends Thomas Obaseki, Meke Ikbelue, and I would go and study in the bush. The school had bushes around, and we had cleared a portion where we built a small shed and would often hide and study privately when other students were doing sports. Our hideout was unknown to most of the students, except for 1 or 2 classmates who somehow found out. On Saturday afternoon, my father came with one of my younger brothers to visit me. After hours of fruitless search, Dad was about to leave in frustration and anger. Luckily, one of my classmates who knew our hideouts said he could find me. The chump came near the bush, repeatedly shouting, "Greg Ogbefu, your father is looking for you." Hearing this had me in jitters. I jumped up and quickly ran out of hiding to meet my father. I had to explain why I was not where I was expected to be. My father did not react to my explanation the way I expected. At least, I thought he would reprimand me or issue a warning, but he did neither. Instead, he was indifferent. Later, during school holidays, he talked about the incident and gave me some money because he said he knew I wanted to be a good student and pass my examinations. I was elated. With this experience, I made sure I remained among the top students in my class for the rest of my secondary school days. Edo College excursion. In our days at Edo College, students were spoilt for choice when it came to school club. How many rested do I have? We had a debate, agriculture, health, geography, and science club. I joined the science club and I was elected as president of the club. Towards the end of my lower 6. This was in the year 1970. As president, I came up with a plan for an excursion to the East Central and River States. General Yakubu Gowon, as head of state in August 1967, had split the country from its former northern, western, midwest